Yeah.
Don't know much about the years of lead. Don't know much about the Franco Fred. Hooray!
I was wondering where you were going to go with that.
Makes me wish that everyone was dead. You're getting black-pilled Fritz today.
Okay.
Yeah. I can connect anything to nuclear war in 5 steps or less.
That's a challenge we'll have to accept.
Hit me. Give me something.
Kali Yuga.
That's
Kali Yuga. All right, easy. You pick up a book about Kali Yuga, you sit outside on the lawn to read it in the sun, but it's not the sun. ICBM. Boom. Neighborhood gone. Evaporated. That's 1 step.
And that's where do we leave the Kali Yuga in the nuclear apocalypse, or?
Right? Don't we? Doesn't that start the new golden age? That's how it is for Catholics. I just assume it's the same for these guys.
Like once the nuclear holocaust happens, then we enter a new cycle.
I don't know, right?
I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Just ignored what we were saying.
Good. Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking about Franco Freda. Yeah.
Oh, hey, yeah. Aren't we doing an episode about that?
We are.
Yes, actually, we're just about to start. I guess this is our final Kali Yuga Reading Room episode, or for now. I think probably we'll continue with this series at some point.
This is the Kali Yuga of the Kali Yuga Reading Room?
This is the end of the cycle, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the way it ends.
Yes.
Way my Kali Yuga ends.
Hey, welcome back to The Empire Never Ended with Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
Hello.
Hello.
We're putting an end to the Kali Yuga today. We learned it all. Learned all 5 of it, or 6 of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is now we're ending the first cycle in our Kali Yuga Reading Room series. I'm sure we'll come back to it, maybe with some more... Maybe next time we open up the Kali Yuga Reading Room, we can read some more kind of like secondary literature, like some books about the traditionalists, maybe?
It's not a bad idea.
Now
Sure.
we were reading sort of the classics of that movement, starting with Renegade on and then going through the 3 political books of Julius Evola.
Yeah.
And now we are finishing with Evola's disciple Franco Freda, who's also one of the main characters of the fascist side of the years of lead in Italy.
Yeah.
A fascist terrorist who also fancies himself as a kind of an intellectual. And we'll see now exactly what that means for a neo-fascist. It's not much, really.
A lot for neo-folk, though, from the look of him.
Oh, there is a neo-folk connection
those
here.
frosted hair and turtleneck, black turtleneck
Is it
sweater.
frosted, or does he have gray hair?
He has gray hair, yeah, and has it, I think, since he was a young man in the 60s.
Oh, man.
Uh-huh. He kind of has, with the jet black eyebrows and the blonde hair, has a little bit of a Phil Leotardo look.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you a couple of 3 things.
Yes. Although he probably would hate to be compared to a Southern Italian.
Oh, right.
I imagine he probably hates them.
But they don't hate the mafia, right? They historically had some connections, right? Especially during this period as well. Now,
yeah, the neo-fascist terrorist had a connection with a gang from Rome specifically, which I don't know if it was or was it also started by Southern Italians in Rome, but it's like a specific gang that's not it's not. The mafia or any of those more kind of, let's say, traditional organized crime groups that exist in Italy. It's just a gang from Rome, but that supposedly had close connections with them and was a part of some of the things going on during the years of lead on the fascist side. Like they are, for example, they are suspected of maybe killing Pier Paolo Pasolini.
Right. Yeah.
Who was also, a known enemy of the fascists and hated by them. So there's also maybe that was the motivation for the killing.
Right. Pasolini, for those who don't know, famous filmmaker.
Yeah.
Which I think we've talked about. We've talked about Pasolini randomly before, no?
We mentioned him here and there, yeah. There's
also
a connection
Salo when we were talking about Ezra Pound and...
Yes, yeah. There is a Pasolini connection, indirect one to what we're talking about, because I think that both the case of his murder and Piazza Fontana investigation are reopened again. Or there is some talk that the murder of Pasolini will be reopened again. And I think it's probably, maybe even the same judge or prosecutor, this system, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly if it's a judge or prosecutor or whatever it is, because it's also kind of a person that kind of investigates the case. So
he's judge, jury, and execute. I know who this is. This is Judge Dredd.
Salvini, I think. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Stallone, different Italian guy.
Yeah. So,
Can we watch Judge Dredd now? We were going to do that before, right?
We were going to watch, but I would be down for that. But we were going to watch fucking Demolition Man.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's the one I really want to see. Sandy Bullock, baby. Classic.
So we started this series. We're talking about René Guénon's book, The Crisis. Is it, what was it? Was it the Crisis of the Modern World? Yeah.
Yeah, so, something modern world crisis, yada yada.
Yeah, and that was like the most kind of mild of the books that we read, in the sense of he wasn't calling for terrorism or even necessarily explicitly fascism or anything like this.
It was kind of the most fun too, in a way. Like like you mentioned that it was written in this very kind of dry, matter of fact way, but about these fantastic kind of lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Although
it.
there was less lore in Guénon than it was in Vola's Revolt Against the Modern World. That's
hardcore.
Yeah, that's Atlanteans, Hyperboreans, everything is there.
Good stuff.
But there is a direct connection, between Guénon and now Freda. Like they all build on each other. Evola builds on Guénon, and then Freda builds on Evola. So they start from, in all of these books that we read, the essence of it, the core of it is this rejection of the whole modern world, and the feeling they have that it's totally doomed, and probably not, it's not possible to save it in any way, or there's nothing desirable about that world, to be saved. So,
and of course, how do they define modernity? I think is an important part of it, right?
Well, the modernity for them is just the last stages of Kali Yuga, because Kali Yuga, as the decadent age, lasts for already many thousands of years. And Kali Yuga as such is modern in some sense compared to, ancient traditional civilizations that are long gone. The Kali Yuga is a kind of the age of materialism and total inversion of traditional values and so on. So this has been going on, for many thousands of years. Modernity is just kind of the last stages of that, which for them is also the sign of the end of the Kali Yuga. It's nearer and nearer for them. And
late stage modernity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for them, that also means that, after the end of the Dark Age of Kali Yuga, a new cycle will begin starting with a new golden age of, where all traditional values, which means hierarchy above everything, will be restored.
Thank God.
So this is some source of optimism for them, but first you need to be, done with Kali Yuga, and there's no point of saving it. So you might as well accelerate it, the fall of it. And this is now the point where we came. There are also signs of this accelerationist ideology in some of the works of Julius Evola, like Ride the Tiger that we read. That's black-pilled Evola, because Evola had some hopes at some moments for, establishing some kind of a more traditional society during the Kali Yuga, or before its total downfall. So he had some hopes for fascism and Nazis, in the 30s.
Who didn't, though?
Then immediately after the war, he had some high hopes for like the neo-fascist kind of right-wing MSI party in Italy. This is when he wrote the book Men Above Ruins that we also read.
What a great book it is.
Yeah. This is the book that he kind of directed towards people who he thought were suitable for somehow renewing a traditionalist civilization in Europe. Yeah. And at the time, he thought these were like European aristocrats and also military men, especially from special forces and so on. So he had hopes for them. And this is, in the early 50s when he had some hopes for some kind of engagement in the political system and so on. But then in the early 60s, he was, totally black-pilled with this whole idea. Although you would think that, like, if you really believe that, Kali Yuga is Kali Yuga, like, how can you have hopes in any kind of political system while the Kali Yuga is going on? I don't know.
I guess you just need something to do.
Yeah.
I gotta say, though, all this talk about exiled nobility coming back to power, backed by special forces, it's not hard to see how this would eventually evolve into some GLADIO compatible shit, This is pretty Angleton-y.
Exactly.
This vibe.
We'll talk about that a little bit more in this episode. And how much of this is, ideology and how much it's like just has some kind of a different functionality for these people. But you will see what I mean by that.
Great.
And then, in the early 60s, Evola writes Ride the Tiger, which is very different from Men Above the Ruins in terms of what he's saying. Now he's talking to a different kind of sort of people. He's talking to the young people who gave up on any kind of ambition in the new world, let's say. And, he's also looking towards the left, towards the existentialists, the Nietzscheans, and he sees some qualities in them that he likes, that he needs that some of the young fascists can adopt, but in a more different traditionalist way. And he proposes this idea of apoleia, which he doesn't really define very much, but it's, total kind of...
That's a pretty good definition of it, though, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, total, like, taking a position of total distance towards the world of politics and just not caring about it, really. And he uses a lot of this, the phrase differentiated man. This is this is the man who does not belong to this world, and he has some kind of inner feeling that he belongs to a different world. So these people should, adopt this attitude of apoleia towards the modern world. And then there were different interpretations. What does this mean? There were like many Evolians among the young neo-fascists in post-war Italy, partially because they were looking for something, fresh, because they just lost the war in a very spectacular way.
Yeah.
And then Evola was kind of the guy that they looked for and found him because he was relatively marginal during the fascist regime, although he had some influence. Mussolini knew him. He actually met Hitler. He was there. You can see him in the background of a picture with Hitler and Mussolini when Nazis saved Mussolini in the end of the war and took him to, Hitler's, what was it? The base, the Wolf's Lair.
Oh, yeah. Or was the Eagle's Nest or something? They all had stupid-ass names like that.
Yeah. And Evola was there. So he was there, but he was in the background, relatively marginal. And he always had some different ideas from mainstream fascism, let's say. So now suddenly he became very interesting for the young neo-fascist. And all of the people who were kind of, who didn't like that MSI, the official kind of neo-fascist party in post-war Italy, which was, present in the Italian parliament immediately after the first elections in 1948, like they never went away. They adopted sort of a more kind of moderate conservative direction. So a lot of people, especially younger fascists who were neo-fascists who were more radical, made their own more extreme groups and adopted a sort of Evolian ideology and phrases and rhetorics and made direct contacts with them. And he became sort of their mentor. So you had groups like Ordine Nuovo. Before that, I think there was a group called NAR, or FAR. And then later on in the 70s and 80s, there was a NAR.
NAR is like the original Atomwaffen in a way.
Yeah,
right?
yes.
That's
yes.
their name was nuclear, what was it?
Armati Rivoluzionari, something like
there
this.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And there was also Avanguardia Nazionale, which is the Stefano Della Chia's group, who was also at some point an Ordine Nuovo member. And then Franco Freda was connected with all of these groups, but he had his own kind of even more elitist group in Padua where he lived, where he founded a publishing house called Edizioni DR, which still exists. Mm-hmm. And also the publishing house sort of appeared in the feature film about some of these events that we watched last time.
So that on Patreon.
Yes. And this is a publishing house that equally publishes Evola, but also Hitler. Like they have 7 different titles by Hitler, which is I don't know what even that is. Like Hitler, I don't know. Yeah, but they have.
What is it, like his speeches or some shit?
I guess so. I don't know. And
so it's got to be fan fiction a little bit. One of them has to be.
Yeah. So there were these interpretations, as I said, of what exactly Evola meant by apoleia. And then there were these interpretations that were kind of more, had a more passive interpretation of it, thinking like it means actually like not engaging with politics. And then there were the more radical interpretations of it, which is the Freda's interpretation, which was that it means that you're supposed to basically destroy the modern world with dynamite. So he is seen as a kind of the most radical interpreter of what apoleia means. That's also what he sets out in the booklet that we read for today for him. That's the aim of it. So we talked a bit about how in December of 1969 there was the famous bombing of Piazza Fontana, a bank on Piazza Fontana in Milan. I think 17 people were killed, 88 were wounded. Anarchists were blamed for it initially. One of them, Pinelli, was murdered by cops while being interrogated in the police station. We talked all about this. But it turned out that the fascists were behind it. And when we say the fascists, we really mean the state.
Yeah.
And, many times we talked about how mentioned this idea how fascism is not actually a political movement, and I sort of made this point many times how it's more akin to some kind of a para-police formation. It has more a function as of the police than like a political movement, and that they have political ideas, but they're sort of secondary. They're almost like an afterthought. They are a way to rationalize their impulses or their function in society that was given to them. And you can see that in this ideology, if we can call it like that, or someone like Evola or his followers, because they're simultaneously different things. They are like the ones who want to be revolutionary fascists who have connections with the left wing and have sort of this kind of national Bolshevik rhetorics, but at the same time they are followers of the guy who said that fascism is too left wing,
Yeah,
and that you need an aristocratic kind of pre-modern system. So, what are you doing? This, doesn't make any sense, And it doesn't matter to them. They can be simultaneously, totally, socialist revolutionaries, but also anti-socialist, people who are into the caste system and having divine kings, and so it's it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah.
Whoever I feel like agreeing with today.
Yeah.
It works because,
And you pretend that it sort of makes some sense, and you have an idea and a doctrine, and an important thinker who you call your own Marcuse, but even better,
right?
Which was how they called Evola. But it doesn't make any sort of sense, you know.
It's the old adage: the enemy of my enemy is my enemy.
Yes. And here, and this is, you know, one of the examples of that is this book or booklet. Really, it's very small, but it's too large for what it says because it doesn't really say anything. Like it's very simple, but it's presented as a kind of a, you know, this is like supposedly the kind of the intellectual side of the fascist movement, you know, and like the people who read and interpret and have ideas.
I gotta say though, Ray, they're kind of 0 for 4 on that one on this show so far.
Yeah.
Let's see if they can make a point on the board here.
I mean, I said this, I think, when we did the Evola episodes, but imagine reading like Against the Modern World and being like, this is philosophy. This is a proper
this is
intellect, like a scholar, a guy who knows what the fuck he's talking about. Like,
yeah.
It's straight up lore building. Yeah, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
The Hyperboreans were cool, but Atlanteans, they mixed up too much with the Lemurian people. So it's not that, not pure Aryan stuff there.
Nah, it's a Chthonic mess.
Yes. So the booklet was published in 1969, so in the same year of the Piazza Fontana bombing. And it's based on a speech that Freda gave on a fascist meeting somewhere in Germany in that year. Okay. And it's called the Disintegration of the System. It's published in English by some fascist publishing outfit called Kali Yuga Press. Appropriate creative.
All right.
It's a horrible translation. Like if it was like Google Translate, it would be better than this. Really. I'm stunned how bad this is.
You went back and read it in Italian because it's easier to read.
I think if I found like an
Italian
PDF and Google Translate, it would make more sense, I think, than this. So it's very short, so it has like lots of like, you know, additional text there in order to make it sort of almost like a book size. Does
it have pictures? Is there like a coloring section?
No.
I'm just kidding. They would only be white
turkeys
anyway.
Yeah. So one of the people who wrote some of these additional texts is a guy called Claudio Muti.
Oh yeah,
he's a
that
friend.
Guy's a freak.
A freak, yes. He's a friend and follower of Franco Freda. He's also a Muslim convert, a total like Evolian guy, and so on. I think he's a professor, high school professor, but I think he has a PhD. I think he speaks Hungarian and Romanian, and is a sort of expert on like Hungarian and Romanian fascism, which he likes very much. And he translates like Corneliu Codranu and like what was Salashi books for Franco Freda's publishing house.
Interesting.
And
weird.
So he's a follower, you know, direct follower of Freda, and so he, you know, writes praises to him. He's also
he got into some sort of like kind of Duginist shit too later on in his life, right?
He's a Eurasianist, and he's a good friend of Dugin. Yeah.
Right.
His son is also like a neofolk guy who has some neofolk projects.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You know, yeah. So Muti says, you know, like in 1968, many people thought that, you know, the process of the final dissolution of the bourgeois world has begun. So what Franco Freda set out for him to do was to kind of offer an option to the young generation who were searching for radical answers to, you know, the questions of the time. So in order for them not to go towards your Marxist reformism, as Muti says, you know, Freda offered a kind of a radical Evolian interpretation of what needs to be done. And that's what the disintegration of the system is about.
Step 1, no more disco.
Yes. I imagine he didn't like disco.
Mm-mm.
So he, according to Muti, you know, wants to offer to the youth the idea of the true state as envisaged by Evola.
Man, the youth love that.
Yes. I mean, weirdly enough, some of them did. Like they had like some followers.
That's not good.
Yeah. I mean, okay, they were the neo-fascist youth.
Even so,
yeah,
pretty lame.
So at the same time, Evola was critical of various Evolians of the time who were either kind of apolitical, didn't want to mix up in things. Some of them, those people, they actually call kind of right-wing anarchists.
Sure.
Are some of the kind of apolitical ones, or the ones who are more conservative and supported some political like options, parties, and so on. And a lot of these people, they were kind of jokingly referring to as the witnesses of Evola or something like this, as a kind of a cult of Evolians and Orthodox Evolians, let's say, who were very passive. So, Freda saw himself as a kind of a radical interpreter of Ride the Tiger in particular. So what he's offering, is the rhetoric of total opposition to the bourgeois world, total rejection of bourgeois personality, way of life, values, everything.
What? He's about to blow our minds.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Prepare to have your world turned upside down.
Yeah. And so, as I said, they rejected, the position of these right-wing anarchists, as they call them.
Because it's not a real thing.
Who are these like kind of apolitical Evolians. And what they become, or they are called, specifically because of this booklet, is Nazi-Maoists. So not right-wing anarchists, Nazi-Maoists.
Nazis.
And so he wants the values of the true state restored, but the way he wants to do it is through what he sees as the communist form.
Okay.
Inspired by Maoism, and so he's talking about the form of the popular state, or the people's state, that he interprets in his own way as a way to restore the true state. The true state is this kind of ideal model, that exists in the world of ideas, and so what exists, in the immanent world is just some kind of a adaptation of those eternal ideals. It's never completely true to it, and he sees as the popular state as one possible interpretation of what a true state can be, or at least a phase in restoring a true state. A phase which is useful because he thinks it's a way to completely destroy the bourgeois world, which is predicated on a merchant kind of society, what he means is Jewish, and like a society based on private property and so on. So he wants to get rid of private property, because he thinks that's the basis of a bourgeois merchant society that we live in. So if you get rid of private property and everything becomes state property, you will get rid of the bourgeois world. And I mean, it's an interpretation, you will see, it's kind of like Joshua Satter's interpretation of what, the Juche is.
Yeah.
It's very similar to it. It's very spiritually very connected. Joshua Satter and Franco Freda, So Freda follows, Evola in this idea that what it means today to be a radical revolutionary is to be integral traditionalist. That's the only way to be a radical revolutionary, basically, in a real sense. Also, he tried to...
An integralist, like with church and state.
Integral traditionalist, they say, is in the term that also, that means Evolian, traditionalist traditionalist in that Evolian sense. So they also, Muti and some of these people here, his followers who admire him, say how he was different from other Evolians because he tried to not only comment on Evola, not to only be a sycophant like everyone else was at the time, but to extract from Evola some kind of a theory of practice.
Sorry, we could probably guess a little bit about what that theory of practice probably is.
There's no theory here. I'm just kind of...
Well, I remember some very, thoughtful writings on for instance, maybe one practical step you could make would be to accept the sort of magical powers that a pure Hyperborean race of Europeans could have, and then work from there towards a sense of complete disempowerment and disenchantment, and then finally sort of give up.
No. These would be these Evolians that he criticizes and rejects,
Oh, but that's like Evola, though.
Yes. Maybe partially he's also critical of Evola as well. I mean, he is. He says that Evola had too much of a kind of a defensive posture and as too much of a kind of a all-time conservative who wanted to defend the West and Western values and so on. Okay. Freda is not about that. He as they say, his book is offensive. It's about attacking the system from the first to the last line, as they say. And also, what's different about it, they say, is that it rejects this fantasy of Europe, and this idea of, they say that the right wing has an imbecilic reflex to systematically defend everything that is somehow European.
Sure.
And they say this is completely stupid because it is exactly European civilization that brought to us the modern world. And they use this kind of, Freda uses in the booklet this very misogynist language. And he says how, Europe is not something to be defended. And he says Europe is a whore who slept around and got infected with all of the ideological.
It's like an edgy freshman fucking literature student.
I mean, it's like Atomwaffen, right?
Yeah.
Right. And got infected with all of the ideological diseases from liberalism to Marxism and so on. So it's like nothing to be praised or defended. So this is this is.
Do you remember Raven from that fucking 09A book we read? The guy who learned to become master of knife.
Oh, yes.
There's a whole chapter in there that's just this, of just him looking out the window and being like, the rain washes off the muck of the city streets, but nothing can wash off this. It's the muckiest city. It's so mucky. Something Holocaust.
Yeah. Yes. So, he says this is the typical right-wing attitude because right-wing is characterized by they're into aesthetics too much, I guess. Sentimentality, romanticization of things, which is stupid,
Well, they wouldn't like white lad aesthetics page.
Yeah.
It's the soft core white guy porn.
Yeah. Or just look at the dudes running security for the World Church of the Creator. You want to see aesthetics. Those dudes.
Those fucking dudes. I forgot about them. Those guys are some of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking bulldog human.
Yes.
So for Freda, an example of this behavior by the right wing is how much they support South Africa and their apartheid regime and want to defend it and so on. And he thinks that's completely stupid because that society there, it was built on Protestantism, which is a total anti-traditional doctrine. And it's a mercantile society, which is proved by the Pretoria-Tel Aviv axis. They're the allies of Israel, which is not surprising. It's totally logical. And right-wingers are idiots for supporting them because they're a bunch of Jews.
Damn.
So so Freda is openly and extremely anti-Semitic, and he's into the protocols of the Elders of Zion and so on. So this is the sophisticated fascist theorist. I mean,
great.
You're back to the protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Awesome. That's great. 50 years after even the guys who published them said they were fake. They're fake, but they're truthful. That's sort of the line you get.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So these Freda sycophants like Claudio Muti, they say, Freda he extended his hand to the radical left wing to join him in the struggle against the system, but they didn't have the good judgment to respond even. Not to accept, but they didn't even respond.
I see. Clearly idiots not to respond to this man.
No, totally really, what a missed opportunity.
Yes.
So they point out how there is a different, another aspect which differentiates Freda from a normal Evolian of the time. It's this kind of anti-European attitude, but also their different views of the fourth estate. They don't really explain this. I mean, Freda doesn't completely explain this. So the thing is that Evola thought that, the proletarians or the fourth estate will be the natural, and their rule will be the natural conclusion of the process started by the bourgeoisie. So, further kind of, further progress of the Kali Yuga and total inversion of traditional values and a more materialist society and so on. But Freda, unlike this, he sees in the fourth estate a possibility to get rid of the bourgeois system and to restore a true state. But what is interesting, he doesn't really define the fourth estate. We are told by the commentaries that he, unlike Evola, doesn't equate the fourth estate with the proletariat.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he thinks that the proletariat is nothing really different in its essence from the bourgeoisie. Like that the proletariat is completely subjugated to the bourgeoisie, and that to de-bourgeoisize the world also means to deproletarize it. Like one goes with the other. But we don't know what the fourth estate is then. Okay. So because he's very much into China and, the Maoist system, I guess he thinks that the fourth estate is maybe, I don't know, an Asian small farmer or something like this. But he doesn't say that. So we are left wondering what he means by that.
Like a kind of peasantry thing, like with the order's obsession with the white yeomanry or whatever.
Maybe, yeah. So this is very interesting because he has this kind of anti-imperialist attitude, which reminds me a lot of Ezra Pound,
Mm-hmm.
You know how Pound was into China and into the Han, specifically, if you remember. And he was like, saying how the Chinese are like kind of one of the superior races and cultures. And also Pound was supportive of kind of proletarian races fighting against plutocratic nations, and he saw somehow, class struggle as a kind of a geopolitical struggle, and also basically Holocaust as a part of this class struggle, because he equated the kind of the merchant banker class with ethnicities like the Jewish one. I mean, it's a pretty horrible way to look at things.
They don't have a strong hold, I think, on class and class theory.
No,
in general.
No.
I mean, I think a statement like, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat are pretty much the same thing, right? I mean, that tells you something.
And we are for the fourth estate, but we don't say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's China.
Yeah, but he has a lot of sympathies for the Chinese state, as in this booklet, and wants to use that model as he understands it, which is very poorly.
It's not a great starting position.
Yes,
I gotta say, for an in-depth analysis of anything.
So he sees the Chinese and also and the Vietnamese, and in a very kind of this superficial way, but he sees them as like a good human material, basically. And he thinks have this kind of superficial Marxist-Leninist kind of surface to them, some kind of superficial understanding of that ideology, but in the essence, there's something deeper there, a kind of an Asian way of looking at life, which is connected to tradition. So he quotes, Chinese and Vietnamese leaders who say how what is primary in war is a spiritual strength and attitude, and how this doctrine that says that sophisticated weapons are crucial and defining should be rejected. What will win is, kind of the man with the right attitude, and because without this man, a weapon is nothing; it's just an object. And
this is sort of the secret, but for like losing a war.
Yeah.
So he's saying that if I understand correctly, so it's this kind of racist view of Asian people where like, yeah, they might say they're Marxist-Leninist, but really they're in touch with the civilization of the ancients or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Traditionalist Chinese characteristics.
They're writing this right in the 60s, no? Like in the 70s? 60s. This is like the smashing the four olds, the Cultural Revolution, shit like that. I mean, it's kind of...
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't understand things. And
widespread destruction of like traditional habits and heritage and whatever.
And what's your point, Boris?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious as to where like what they were reading about China. Were they just reading like the Little Red Book or something, or were they? I'm trying to figure out what they're.
This is you know what his understanding is. It's like also like an understanding of another Western right winger is like John Milius, who wrote the Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
And he speaks through Kurt, through Marlon Brando. The way Marlon Brando talks about like people in what is Cambodia, where's the film set?
The horror.
Yeah, they're he was transfixed and totally changed by the determination that he saw in those people.
My God, the will, the clarity of it all.
Yes,
I mean, which is of course based on Heart of Darkness.
Yeah. So I think this is what Freda, he's like that Kurt's guy, kind of. Only in Padua, not in Cambodia.
Yeah. That's a different story. That's true. Huh.
And, he writes these things how he wants to set up this kind of quasi-Maoist system in Europe and like open up the fourth front, he says. After the Asian, African, and Latin American, we should open up a European front in the struggle against American Zionist imperialism.
Just like the Chinese did.
So Freda also admires Che Guevara, in one of his editions of an Evola book about like military doctrine, which you can imagine what it is, like, a military doctrine according to Evola. So Freda publishes that books, but like I guess writes some kind of a preface or something like that, and in it he quotes Che Guevara because Che Guevara also wrote like I think a book about guerrilla fighting or something like this, and then he also mentions how Che Guevara was an admirer of Perón, and Perón also liked Che Guevara and Castro, and Perón gave an interview to another European fascist, Jean Thiriart, who's also one of these kind of national Bolshevik ideologues. Okay. He was in the Belgian guy who was in the Waffen-SS, and then after the war developed this kind of a Eurasianist worldview. Later on was a friend and influenced Dugin and so on. So he interviewed Perón, and Perón in that interview said good things about Che Guevara and how he got Che Guevara's book from Che Guevara with like a note personally for him there, and how Castro is not a kind of a Soviet type of communist, but an anti-imperialist and so on. So they like this very much, and Muti writes about admire in a way, in a positive way, about left-wing Peronists, and who are anti-imperialist nationalists, and their connections with the Palestinian struggle, which they support very much. And I think Freda or Muti say something how they use the term Palestinian terrorist, something like this, but how a Palestinian terrorist is in spirit much closer to what they want than some kind of they always say Jewish or Judaized European. They always use this term. They
do a lot of this kind of exoticizing and othering of all these other things. That's essentially what they're doing constantly. Yeah. This is,
Exactly.
But it's a very fascist take, too. I mean,
yeah.
And in very many ways, a very European take. No.
Yeah.
This is what they do.
I mean, this is like what I said, why it reminds me so much of Ezra Pound, because when he writes about the war in Vietnam, he said that he supports the anti-plutocratic struggle of the Vietnamese people, and things like this. And this is when he talks about, how they're only superficially Marxist-Leninist and so on. They also, want to point out how the communist idea is much older than, Marx and Engels and those Jews.
Okay.
Plato wrote about communism. So did, Thomas More and Campanella in The City of the Sun. And also they say it's not true that, they say it's some traditional civilizations were also organized in a collectivist way. And even though like the most recent traditional civilizations that existed in the West had private property, it doesn't mean that you cannot have in the new cycle a traditionalist civilization which would not be based on private property. Like there's nothing in the tradition that says that,
The tradition.
Yes.
Nothing in the tradition that says that.
Yes.
Yeah, so they haven't said it yet.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
Good to keep in mind that he's talking about something that does not exist.
So, they kind of say they agree that Freda's solution is an extreme one, but they say, it's an extreme solution for an extreme sickness.
I mean, it's funny. It's kind of cute because it's sort of literally the opposite of the withering of the state idea, Yeah. You take the state and then it withers. These guys just take the state and wither the proletariat.
Yes. You destroy the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, and then a traditional state will arise,
I mean, I just wanted to clarify. When he says that, like, destroy the proletariat, destroy the bourgeoisie, is he trying to say that the proletariat as an identity is a relationship to bourgeoisie as an identity? Therefore, when that relationship is gone, those classes cease to exist? Or is he straight up saying, we'll fight them in the offices, we'll fight them in the factory floors?
He doesn't explain much, but he says that he wants to destroy the bourgeois society, then it's based in private property. If you get rid of the private property and everything is owned by the state, then you get rid of the bourgeois society. And with it, I guess, the proletariat as it exists in capitalism, I think, is what he's saying.
Oh, I mean, okay, there's something, at least.
Yeah.
Like, if he's talking about, but again, like, it's from, like you said, a pamphlet.
Yes.
So we're also giving a pretty generous interpretation.
No, I mean, this is much more, what I said is much more concise. He doesn't say it in such a concise way, but I guess that's what he means.
We got to stop helping these guys, reword their own texts on the show.
Yeah.
So, so after the war, you had all of these groups, like Ordine Nuovo, FAR, Avanguardia Nazionale, NAR, and so on, who interpret in different ways, basically ride the tiger, and Freda's interpretation is, according to some of them, the most radical one, which means we need to completely destroy the bourgeois society. And some of his followers are later organized in this journal called Quex, I think, which exists up to the 90s. It's named after...
what's it called?
Quex?
Quex. It's like Q-U-E-X, I think. It's named after a character in a Nazi film from the 1930s.
Quex Mix.
Like a feature film about a Hitler Jugend guy called Quex, I think. So it's actually like a prison. It's interesting. It's a prison journal, like a magazine, made by fascist prisoners from some of these terrorist organizations, in which they write things. And so they have this kind of Franco Freda interpretation of Evola, really. So in one of these articles in Quex, they say something like, it is not the power that we aspire to, nor the creation of a new order. It is the struggle that interests us, the action itself, the daily affirmation of our own nature. Okay. So this is what they write in 1980, these followers of Franco Freda. They were also killing each other in prison. If someone like became a rat, they would kill him. So one of the guys was called Claudio Muti. No, not Claudio Muti. Claudio Muti is the nerd. I think it's Tutti, actually.
Muti and Tutti.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think that Tutti personally strangled one of his buddies in prison for becoming a traitor. And that guy is still alive, and now he's like has some this kind of half system. Like I think needs to go to sleep in prison, but he's like free during the day. and he's giving interviews, and like you have him on YouTube having nice conversations with people and so on.
Man, imagine how much some of those American Nazis would love to go to prison in Europe. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
That's fucking... All right, Tootie, just make sure you're home by lights out.
Yeah.
She has a little curfew. The fuckers out there doing interviews and shit.
I'm not giving you another yoga mat, Tutti.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you killed your cellmate who used to be your old friend or whatever, but, you know, we'll take away your weekends, only weekdays out.
Yes, we advocate for harsher prison conditions. No,
I'm just saying.
I mean, I know what you're saying. I know. Yeah. American prisons are hell. Yeah.
So they're into action itself as a goal itself, and this also has something to do with Evola saying how unlike Guénon, who believed that there is still some possibility for initiation in Kali Yuga, Evola said there isn't any. So this dedication to action, which means killing ordinary people with bombs and then ending up in prison and strangling your friends and so on,
killing ordinary people with bombs and then blaming other people for it.
Yes, and blaming anarchists while working with the cops.
Yes.
In the modern world, this is the substitute for initiation. Okay. This is a way to spiritually develop.
Okay.
So you cannot, be a member of a knightly order, or in that way get in direct contact with, the supernatural. But what you can do is put a bomb in, a bank in Piazza Fontana and kill a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was listening to
that's the way of the warrior, they say.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah.
And they say nothing. They quote, and they find backing for this in tradition. So they say nothing pleases Odin more than the sacrifice that a warrior makes who dies in the battlefield. Something like that.
Oh, yeah.
What, they're Odinists now?
Odin. Well, Odin is a traditional figure,
They're Italian. Why don't they?
I don't think they think they're Italian. Okay. I don't think Franco Freda thinks that he's Italian. He probably thinks that he's like a Visigoth or something like that.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not thinking in those terms. I'm corrupted by modern thinking.
I was listening to some Nazi on a podcast recently discuss some of these issues, and one of the comments that he made was he was talking about like the overlaps between these fascists here in the years of lead and their like superficial interests in some leftist movements and what they were interested in. And at one point, he muses this, like, because the leftists and the fascists, like they have a lot in common. They have a lot in common. Like a lot of the things are the same. I think the biggest difference is that the leftists tend to do more like organizing, maybe more nonviolent organizing or targeted assassinations, and us fascists, we tend to gravitate towards indiscriminate civilian killing. And they were like, yeah, that's probably the main difference here.
Yeah.
Good analysis.
Yes, it is. Yes, exactly. And working for the cops.
Oh, well, that was also mused upon. The same person asked later in the podcast, why is it that we always seem to work for the state? An earnest question.
Yeah.
Earnest question.
That's a real head scratcher there.
The answer is because you kind of are the state. That's sort of the easy answer.
I think I know who this is. That guy's a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he is. He tries.
So I can give you some quotes here directly from the text. So Freda says, the consideration that we live is this. We live today in a world of others, surrounded by others, by these dignified representatives of the bourgeois epoch, under the domination of the most miserable and most dementing of dictatorships, the bourgeois dictatorship, that of the merchants. All that surrounds us is bourgeoisie, political society, economics, culture, family, social mannerisms, religious manifestations.
Okay.
Then...
Sure. Wake up, sheeple! It's the they live thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, the true state does not propose as its authentic goal economic wealth and well-being for all its citizens or a lone social group, but what the ancient Greeks lucidly defined in terms of felicity, eudaimonia, of harmony of the different components of the body of the state. So the true state is the one where everyone have their own place and occupy it with dignity in accordance with tradition.
Been hearing that a lot on the show lately. A lot of our authors these days seem to have that opinion.
He says the true state holds as an organizing principle of a reconquest that man must do.
Hey.
The reconquest of the higher world, the reestablishment of his heroic dimension.
Reconquest like man.
Ray, please say it correctly. It's called the Reconquista?
The Reconquista of a higher dimension. Right. In addition, it is the true state that proposes to each man the recognition of his own irreducible function, of his proper place, of his proper nature, the insertion into the just relations of superiority and inferiority. In a word, the recognition of its proper freedom. Freedom that does not derive, as we said, from abstract facts and simply being elementary man, but that is measured by the stature, by the dignity of each.
Yeah.
That's the fucking true state. And how you want to, somehow create it is through having some weird, like fascist interpretation of what a Maoist system is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess at this point they don't really. They'll take whatever,
Yeah. So, but in order to create this popular state, first you need to destroy the bourgeois world, and he explicitly mentions the word accelerate here a few times. You need to accelerate the destruction of the present political bourgeois system any way you can, the most destructive way you can find to get everything, just completely dismantled.
Well, I guess I'd start with the fascists personally. Do you think this is where Reconquista, the Reconquista Club comes from?
I think it's one of the
that term comes up
for that.
so much in different.
Yeah, I think.
But we also know that they're traditionalists. Like it comes from the Ukrainian Traditionalist Club, as I recall. So I assume it's one. Of
I think that they directly refer to like the Spanish Reconquista, but probably this is also one of the sources for inspiration. As we'll see at the end.
Just to remind people what we're talking about, that would be the infamous to us club in Ukraine that's hosted some of our favorite stars on this show at various times, and it is connected to Azov and the Intermarium.
It doesn't exist anymore, but it was owned by Azov. And at some point, we think that both Atomwaffen Division and David Maet were attending discussions and presentations.
Discussing felicity!
Yes. But by the way, those people will make an appearance in this episode right at the end.
Of course. Of course.
Not Atomwaffen David Maet, but the Azov people.
Damn.
That's fine still. It's fine. It's fine.
So Freda also says something like this. It is necessary by promoting, goading, accelerating the time of this destruction, intensifying the action of rupture from the present equilibrium and today's phase of political arrangement. It is necessary to watch for those eventual means, the potential forces that should determine the short-circuiting of the nervous centers of this bourgeois civilization, and so on. So he wants to short-circuit the bourgeois civilization to accelerate its downfall.
Presumably, maybe some more indiscriminate bombings, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay. I thought he was doing the more Burroughs way and trying to bring static into the pyramids. It's kind of...
So, the way that he describes the popular state is this kind of a caricature. This is where, it's like this kind of Joshua Sutter interpretation of Juche. It's very simplistic. Like, he says like, okay, there will be, he uses a lot of words like combines and like commissars and politburos and, it's like a lot of talk like that. So you would have like, what did he say? Like cooperatives, enterprise cooperatives. He means industry by that. And they would be run by commissars. And then you would have like agricultural combines. They would have their own commissars, and also like centers for consumption. And the state run by political presidium that would occasionally choose a regent of the state. So you have commissars and regent
the commissars in this case are doing
Okay.
ideological agitation on using what as a basis. I mean, like, you know, commissars in the Soviet army had very clear, or, you know, in any communist army, very clear ideology that they were working with. What's Freda's, you know, he has some trouble with Evola, so are they, it's, you know, what's he making them read?
I really don't know.
What the
I think I might have an answer for this, Boris. An answer provided to us from Iron Gates, where, if I remember right, the commissar's job in Iron Gates was to fill the babies with the baby exploding serum and then throw them at people to be devoured.
That's probably the plan, yeah. Maybe Freda meant to write a book like that,
That'd be Freda's work, the commissar's.
Yeah,
he had to wait till the FBI figured out that, you know.
So, you know, the state is, I guess, run by this regent of the state, which is chosen by the political presidium of the state, and under the regent of the state, you have state commissars for different areas of, you know, social life. Or
is he just using the term commissar kind of arbitrarily? Does he know what that means?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, no. And then all property would be owned by the state. There will be no banks by one central state bank. There will be
Tutto nello Stato, right?
There will be a popular militia running things, and there will be harsh punishments for crimes against the state, mostly forced labor, and then for the gravest crimes, there will be death penalty, you know.
Ah, yeah. Is this what the song, Don't Turn Around, Commissars in Town? Whoa. Is that some Ordina Nuovo song?
I mean, like, but, yeah. It's stupid. It's like commissars have a political function too in military, but like I have the feeling that he just kind of did a really brief look through of some terminology and was like, okay, let's apply this here and there. Because we have a regent
and it's a very short. I mean, he never like wrote like some, you know, book on the popular state as he sees it. Like the only thing we have is this very short, stupid pamphlet, which is based on a talk he gave for a bunch of Nazis in Germany.
Well, it feels that way. That is the vibe.
Yeah. So, you know, we are somehow supposed to believe that this is a real thing. And at the same time, we know that there were meetings attended by Freda and his collaborators and by the agents of secret police in Italy and NATO that were saying things like, yeah, we should bomb a bunch of stuff and then like pin it on anarchists and communists, you know? And then at the same time, he's writing this quasi-communist pamphlet and trying to have connections with leftist groups, you know? So like, which is it? Is he like authentically, you know, inspired by Maoism?
I don't think so. So and this is, I think, when it goes back to like Sutter and his understanding of Juche, I think that to them, like they're reading about like kind of the most extreme excesses happening in China at this time, and they attach themselves to like the violence of that. And since it's happening in these other places, they can have their whole like othering moment of like, that's, you know, Europeans are weak. This, you know, what's happening in China, that's like a negation of what exists in Europe and our civilization. Kind of actually like Chinua Achebe's critique of Heart of Darkness, right? That like Africa is where Westerners project this kind of whatever. And I think that he's maybe looking at all this violence and being like, I want that, but not actually, you know, having a broader understanding of like the ideological context of Maoism, or, you know, the history of, you know, socialism and communism in China or anywhere else in East Asia. He's just like, I really want to do extreme violence and I'm reading about that.
Yeah.
And so I'll link up with others who want to do that too. Right. I mean, because that's accelerating the end. I think, is that, am I understanding this correctly?
You are, but that's like, like one level of like understanding this thing. What I'm the
tip of the iceberg, boys. Yes. Tip of the iceberg.
The question I'm posing is like only a rhetorical question, and it's like to the point that we made earlier on, how fascists are not an actual political ideological movement, but like a kind of a para-police formation, is like, what is more important to determine if this is a real thing or not? This stupid, nonsensical, extremely superficial and bad little pamphlet in which he says he wants to have a Nazi-Maoist state, or the fact that at the same time he and his friends had meetings with cops and like secret police people and came up together in with the doctrine how they want to, among other things, try to infiltrate leftist groups.
Right. Yeah.
And pin like terrorist acts on them, and also like that guy Vinciguerra that we mentioned, who was like doing all of these things with them, and at some point, I guess, got sick of it and started talking, and then got arrested. He says that Franco Freda told him that this text is a complete fake thing, and it's a way for him to try to get closer with some leftist groups. So that's what I'm saying. Nazi-Maoism is not like a real thing. It's not an ideology that someone actually believes in or cares about. Like it's just it's a game that like the state played.
Yeah. So when we were sitting there wondering if he has like some kind of sense of class relationships, in fact, what we should have been wondering is what pamphlet about class relationships did he read 5 minutes before writing this?
Yeah. I mean, okay, he's obviously crazy. Maybe he also believes that something like a true state exists in the world of ideas, and there is some way to reach it or whatever. But like, I mean, who cares? Like, the state didn't care about that. Like, he was just a pawn in some bigger game. And like, and he also writes here how this popular state, when they come to power in Italy, will align itself with all of the authentically anti-capitalist states and will fight against American Zionist imperialism and so on. He also says, and also against revisionists. So he adopts this term revisionism from Maoist and Stalinists and so on to talk about the Soviet Union. So Soviet Union is a revisionist, but Franco Freda is not. He's, I guess, an authentic Marxist or something like that. I mean, stupid. But at the same time, they are having meetings with like, intelligence agencies connected with the CIA. Okay, so
because they think that they're the smart ones in the room and that they're playing everyone.
And meantime, they're the dumbest motherfuckers in the country, not in the room. And so that's what's going on. But so this book was actually kind of in some way in the news in the recent years. And this is because the Azov movement that we already mentioned, and specifically Olena Semenyaka, published a Ukrainian translation of the book Disintegration of the System in the end of 2019.
Oh man, I would love to know the foreword for it. I really want to know how they think about this.
They have we can publish the front page, like the cover page of the book. It has an illustration of young Franco Freda holding that kind of two-sided double X that was the symbol of some of the neo-fascist terrorists there, and they're like flags of all of these terrorist groups in Italy there. Like there is a flag of the Ordine Nuovo, Avanguardia Nazionale, and all of these FAR groups and so on. And when they published this, they also presented the book, the Azov movement did, at the most prestigious university in Kyiv, but they did that without a permit, so they kind of basically violently occupied a room there and did a presentation of the book at the National University of Kyiv, Mohyla Academy. And this is kind of a scandal when it happened, and then the president of the university kind of explained that they were never given any kind of permission, that they asked for permission a week before the event, never got it, and then just showed up there and occupied the room and had their little presentation. But they also did a presentation of the book in their own headquarters in Kyiv, and on that occasion, Olena spoke about the book there. It's a pretty seems kind of a luxurious edition of the book, and it's quite thick. I imagine there's like a bunch of additional text there because the text is very short, So I guess they added some things. There was also, I think, maybe source of some embarrassment for them because in the recent years, Franco Freda is very enthusiastic about his support for Putin. Saying how he's the only sensible politician in Europe who will save the white race and such things. But I guess they don't care because they like his stuff so much, it's worth so much, his thoughts and so on, that even that he's a Putin supporter doesn't really matter.
I mean, they understand that split because they've seen that already in their own movement. I mean, Elena was friends with Dugin.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
This makes sense to them.
She's got a chapter in an edited volume of Dugin's before they broke up,
Yeah.
So the book was presented at the university by these two guys from the Azov movement. Their names are, let me see, what are their names? Evgeny Vryadnik and Serhiy Zaykovsky. And they're both, at the time, were already veterans of the Azov regiment. And one of them, I think, Zaykovsky was very active at the... my God, my brain is not working now. What's the internet forum that created Atomwaffen Division? Iron March.
Iron March.
Yeah. So Zaykovsky was very active on Iron March and also exchanging direct messages there with Brandon Russell and so on.
Wow.
So had direct contact with Atomwaffen. So Atomwaffen was not lying when they were saying how they have connections in the Azov movement and so on. They actually do from a very early stage of their existence as a group.
His name is very familiar to me too. I'm trying to remember where I know it from.
Yeah.
It might be from Iron March, but it might be more recent as well.
There was a Bellingcat text that mentioned him about this, the publication of this book and the way they organized the presentation at the university there and their connections with Atomwaffen and so on.
Oh, I think he died.
Oh, he
at the
did?
beginning of this war. He's Deimos, I think. Oh, he's a very important guy.
Yeah, he's one of the leaders.
Yeah.
Was.
Yeah. And I mean, the book publication was like promoted and attended also by other groups like Wotan Youth and so on. Wotan Jugend. Sorry for making this mistake.
I forgive you.
Yeah. He's the motherfucker from plumbing. He died in the very beginning of the war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Bringing it all back.
So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's a bit confusing, but it's, I guess, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the point at the end is, it doesn't matter what this guy wrote. He was part of some weird plan.
I think so, yeah. It's stupid shit. It's very superficial. Doesn't make a lot of sense. He doesn't take himself seriously. Like, everyone is, so these people are like this Olena, who is this kind of quasi-intellectual leader of the fascists.
She takes them so seriously,
like,
these people.
What is there here to take, to be taken seriously? Like, this is not, like, you cannot, like, when you look at different, like, anarchist and communist and Marxist, whatever, socialist movements and the way they approach ideas, even, okay, we like some of them, we hate some of them, whatever, but they actually are talking about concepts, and have arguments about them and huge fucking books and conferences and so on. And this is like, what is this guy saying? Like, I
think it might be exactly why she loves him, because it's so poorly written that it's just open for interpretation. We just did that this episode.
Yeah.
We got sucked in. You're right.
We got sucked in. We came to better conclusions than what he was probably trying to make.
Yeah.
But
what I'm saying, if you want to analyze, what the Nazi-Maoists were, it's better to organize a transcript from a meeting they had, with all of these cops and other people.
Yes.
That's an important document.
Yes.
This is bullshit. Okay.
Yes. No. Yeah. I mean, half of their fucking theoretical literature seems to be honey traps, often written by feds or, by feds. I would count this guy as like a fed. Yeah. I mean,
he did the Piazza Fontana bombing, didn't go to jail for it. He went a few years to jail for some other shit, but not, that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Italy knows he fucking did it.
Yeah. Right. He's their OJ.
Yeah.
If OJ killed 17 people. in a very famous bombing orchestrated with the help of
Okay, I see what you're
NATO
saying.
deep state operatives.
OJ's like our Franco Freda, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think you said that.
Well, look, as long as Ray said it.
No, I think Fried said that. Well,
Didn't I? But I brought up O.J. Simpson.
You did bring up O.J. Simpson
in the film episode.
Yeah, if the quote fits, you must acquit.
Oh, Christ.
Speaking of acquit, that's the end of the Kali Yuga Reading Room cycle. We are now through Kali Yuga. The golden age is upon us. It's called Arc 5. Yeah. Still don't know exactly when Arc 5 is going to start, but man, it's getting closer and closer. I can smell it. Any day now. We're back in the USSA. Wait.
Okay. USSA.
Yeah, like the SS. Because we're talking about Nazis in America.
Sure, yeah.
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
Franco Freda. Bullshit. Traditionalism. Made up garbage.
Yeah, this is I'm glad that we spent the intro arc with finally getting Evola and Ganon. Honestly, that's such an important part that I think gets overlooked sometimes. He's like a more legit person than somebody like Evola. But, and especially somebody like fucking Franco Freda. But
I think this is nice too because it liberates us in the future from having to get too deep into the thoughts of these idiots, which is always part of the big problem. Now we can just shout out like, it's Evola, it's that guy. It's that guy, but he's in this case he's like a cannibal. And
now we can always reference these episodes whenever Evola comes up, which he will over and over and over again.
Sure.
Instead of being like, I promise we're going to do episodes on Evola. Which is we usually do with some of the heavy hitters.
We finally get to check off some of our promises that we made. We do keep them, just years later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Franco Freda is nothing but like an Italian James Mason, I would say. But,
no, he's not, because we on this show believe that James did not work with the feds yet.
We do?
We tend to take that position. Yeah. He has cop friends, but...
somehow James Mason's... No, I won't say that. Well, it somehow is more articulate. He's more straightforward.
Damn, you know what I'm realizing is just like... yeah, you're right. We started with James Mason thinking that was the bottom. You remember? Like, this guy, this fucking book is going to be like the worst thing we ever read on this show, Yeah. And as the show goes on, all these fucking people...
James Mason, Siege is worse than this in other ways.
I think that Mason is worse than this because, exactly as you said, he's like much more straightforward and like less pretentious. Yeah. And there's something very kind of disgusting about how American he is.
Yeah.
There's no pretense of being some kind of intellectual or some deep thoughts or whatever. He just it's so disgusting the way he directly talks about praising serial killers and mass murderers and but all in this kind of a very simple kind of way of, I don't know, it's disturbing. He's disturbing.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the case with, I've said this over and over and over again in the show. Like when you read Iron March, and it's like all the Atomwaffen psychos and all these Americans who are just like, yeah, school shootings, all this shit. Like all the European Nazis seem like normal people. It's like, oh yes, my girlfriend and I went to the cinema, and then I got together with the lads, and we beat up an immigrant. And some of the American ones are just like, whoa, now you're very crazy.
I smeared blood on this piece of leather.
Yes.
Summoned
We're
Belial.
engaging in our Satanist poop ritual now. Kill my mom and dad. Eat them.
Yeah, America truly is a magical place. Can't wait to get back.
Yeah, it certainly makes for fun fashfic for us, though.
It does. Yeah, Covington's got a whole fucking library. Let's just say a farewell to Kali Yuga and
for now
await the golden age to come, where we're all immortal.
The golden age of American fascism.
That's correct. Yes, any day now. Any fucking day now. All right, later.
All right, later.
Bye.
Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.